Bueno, buenas tardes.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Mónica López Baltodano. I come from Nicaragua. Today I had the privilege of to be able to interview my friend Deng. I hope I spoke it well or pronounced it well. Deng is Secretary General of the Alashan Society of Entrepreneurs and Ecology. He is promoter of endogenous development. He has received several awards. Then was born in Hsu and currently works in the province of Yunnan. I hope the interpreters have shown me how to speak this. Ben, first of all, thank you for your willingness to speak with us, not only today, but all these days that you have been burdened with so many questions. The first question that I would like to make, if you have ever met a woman from Nicaragua. Well, I did my homework, Ben. So China's population is 220,000 bigger than Nicaragua. In my country, that we are 6.5 million people, while in your only in the province when you work or you work, there are 45 million people. So your province where you work is 3 times bigger than my whole country. But although China is immense, I also consider that my country is immense. For example, we have in Nicaragua a great lake, the Lake Pocivolca. This is the second biggest lake of water in America, and it has sweet water sharks with 2 beautiful volcanoes in an island that it's within the lake. So you will understand at the end of the interview why I speak about this lake. I know that you share with us your work, the organic production of tea, honey, tobacco, cosmetic products. So in this interview that will be only of 8 questions, because we have spoken with several people, this is not only my questions. I want to ask you 8 questions about your country. Let's go with the first one. We know that China faces serious environmental problems. For example, the media recently said that 50 cities were declared in red warning due to pollution. We would like to know what are those environmental regulations that you have. What do you do to implement these regulations in such a big country? Good afternoon to all. On the pollution in China, I think this is not new. Everybody is aware. But I think 2 years ago there was a meeting in Beijing. And what I said is to disappear pollution is not only a political change, but it's also a social matter. And what are we going to do as a society? If we go to Beijing or to other provinces or cities, you will see that there are thousands of families that to survive or to improve their livelihoods, they have smaller companies, whether it's of steel, because these are private and small companies and not as the big companies that have machinery or installations that are different and advanced. So what I'm saying is this work opportunity necessarily has a negative impact in pollution. Obviously, I don't like pollution, but how do we solve it? At different stages. Or there are different aspects. So from the point of view of saying that it's responsibility only of the government, it's not true. But if I say, what do I do to relate with these people so these people can understand that we should not use, and without using this type of methods that have a negative impact in the environment, that pollute, they can survive without this negative impacts. We have been speaking the whole day about development, of improvements, of ecology. I come here to Ecuador and I really feel well because I don't have to worry about basic things. The air is quite pure, there's not so much pollution. But if we think that that development is the same as monetary development, then if the Ecuadorians are as the Chinese, and they want more monetary development or economic development, maybe then Quito or Ecuador will turn into Chinese conditions. So I'm more realistic from different aspects, and I ask myself all these questions also. I know that you don't work in public offices, but I want to ask you, we know that in China there are great mega projects like the Gorges Dam. That is the biggest hydroelectric plant, and it was installed in the Yangtze River. We know that that hydroelectric power flooded more than 300 villages and cities, with almost 2 million people that were affected. What we ask ourselves, are there citizens consultations in China for this type of mega projects? How does the Chinese government manages the displacement of the population that has to be moved? This is so. I really do not know, but let's say that there is a system in China that is called, or there is a representative of all the citizens, of the Chinese citizens. And I think that there are people that agree or don't agree. If I speak as an individual, I think if we go to the province that is under the hydroelectric dam and we ask them, do you like it or do you agree with the with the dam? Maybe they would say yes. Because before that we had the dam, these areas were always flooded. And with the floods, everything was damaged. But if we go to Shanghai, that is one of the cities with the greatest productivity in China. When the whole river was flooded, almost many people almost died in China. I'm not exaggerating. So if you ask, do you agree with the hydroelectric plant? They would say yes, because this is diminishing the floods that there were before. But if you ask other people, if you see the changes that have happened in the environment around, I personally would not like, because I live on the northern part of the river. So whatever happens to the river, now or before, it did not affect me, but the climate impact, yes, I'm not happy with it. So it's very hard to say who is right and who is not, because everybody has different points of view and different experiences in this regard. From the Chinese culture, what you say is that in the world there is not something that is the best or the worst. We say that there is a balance in everything. In all human development of history, there are many things that there is now a final conclusion. For example, when I was young, fertilizers had arrived. So we were all happy because obviously that increased the yield, the crop yield. But now obviously we see that the decades have changed. So now we say obviously that we realize that it has bad consequences. So going back to the hydroelectric dam, independently if it's good or bad, for each one it has different ideas. So through its existence, what are the advantages and disadvantages? And we should see what are the learning things, the learning lessons. So I would not be able to say if it's good or bad. Thank you, then. The next question that I have. If there are social organizations in China, how does the population manage all these matters related with the mega projects? How does what is the perspective of the society?
这个今天上午的时候，我们的黄教授啊，已经。
I have said about this, but nevertheless I will try to repeat again. In China, there is a province that's called Fujian, where Sinopec and others work there. They did the investment that they will continue. So at that moment, the people realize of the project. Some people that have an understanding of the project agree with it, and the other ones didn't. So we started speaking about the information of the project. And we start to spread out the word that what dangers are there, what conflicts can there be. From there on, all the local people started to walk through the streets to say something, and everybody walking like a way to express that agreement. So I asked myself, what is information? If this information, for me, with this information is key, what is the decision that the local people would take. I live very far away from that place. I, as an activist, I'm going to pay attention, but for example, a trader or somebody that is in another work that are far away from this place, you can say, well, I'm sorry, this is not good, but they don't express in this regard. So that's why I say that the main stakeholders are the local people of the city that has been affected. So only you, living through you, where you suffer a threat or base the understanding that you have on the acts, only there would be really solutions or proposals that really adjust to the situation. What means Denji when you say that you're a Chinese activist? I don't know if it was the translation, but I heard that you said that you were an activist. What is it to be a political activist? I'm saying that I'm individualistic. Each one has its own choices. For example, 20 years ago, I worked in an institution to protect from the government. And what I knew about the environment was very simple. I just would say, no, you shouldn't hunt birds. It's forbidden to do this or that thing. But this is a natural right. I remember there was a lady, more or less of 70 years, with her grandchildren, that I told them that you cannot do this. And she says, oh, 100 of years ago in my house we have been doing this. So why now that you come and you're saying that this is forbidden? So my answer is that we should all work for sustainable development, so this is prohibited. So the lady said, Professor, if I don't touch anything of this, I would not survive. I wouldn't be able to survive. If I'm not able to survive, I wouldn't have children or grandchildren. If I don't have children or grandchildren, how am I going to have a sustainable development? So when we protect the environment, it's my work. Obviously, I should transmit this, but in this process, the people, the local community, what is their reaction? So for us, it's something that obviously passion is important, but for us it's very important to think. I really love the environment. I don't like oil or mining. In all my house we moved towards the interior of China. But if I don't like these types of things, can I escape from all of this? If I don't have oil, if I don't have planes, can I go in a horse to Ecuador and attend this meeting? Well, no. So I say it's not simple to answer this type of questions. In all this process is how we find a balance in everything. If really we love so much the environment, we should not have electricity at this moment. So we should try to find a balance. This is better than any extreme. The example that you just mentioned makes me think, what are the dialogue instances that there are between Chinese citizens and the government? For example, do you have access to have a dialogue with the state companies when they carry out these mega projects in your country? Well, there are some regulations in China that if we have to carry on a project, there is an impact assessment on the environment. So if you really want to have a project, then we have to go through this assessment. Before each one, there were more studies that complement. So you can really be able to get this approval from all the professionals and specialists so they can implement the project. So the key of the conditions within this assessment is that they should communicate and to see what the local community is asking. What are they saying? What are their needs? So it can be that the project that they will do is not in agreement, but maybe 10 kilometers away, people that have not used electricity, for example, people of the local community will say, well, this is going to be good because they have never had electricity before, and now they're going to have it. So there is a series of system in these evaluations, and the professional and the specialist says yes or no. Obviously, there are questions and problems. For me, this is a process when each time we are going developing more. For example, when we are born, we don't know how to walk, but after many attempts, we learn how to walk. This is a process. So going back to the topic, each time we are improving, but what do I don't agree? Especially in the environmental impact studies in China. Because I think that there is morality of the specialists. I have seen many assessments. I have seen with my own eyes that what they call themselves scientists. For example, if I say they are looking at roads of 15 kilometers, but in reality the implementation is 5. So when you implement really, we see that this does not work. So there are many technical mistakes. So each time we realize and we are aware of the importance of these evaluations. So I think in this way we are going to improve the things. So obviously there are specialists and professionals that are going to say that we have to fix the things. I study energy, or I study electricity. So for each one, from my point of view, if I study energy, I'm going to say, yes, let's do the project. But if I study biology and I study ecology, I would say, no, we should think it better. We should analyze it better. So all the human beings, we face the same problems. When we face one mistake after the other, what is it that we understand of each experience? Of if we are very stubborn and we say we have to keep doing this and this way. Since this is an interview about the social environment in China, it's also true that there are people that would say that China is a patriarchal society. Nevertheless, in your opinion, what role do women play in Chinese society, and especially in relation to the protection to nature? In Chinese tradition, it's long. It's a very long tradition. Since the Han Dynasty, more or less a second century after Christ, we had an emperor, Wu Zetiye. In the remote past, where I am working, there we have an ethnic majority where the women are the ones who marry men. In the other ethnic minority of my ethnic group, it is the man that reaches the house of the woman and lives in her house. So in other words, the sons or the offsprings take the mother's last name. Well, it's not in the case of the ethnic majority Han, but generally we have more than one example that can show the preponderance or the importance of women in Chinese society. Let's go of what we all know, the family planning of the state since 2008 till 2015. That state policy really caused several problems in the Chinese population. There was a moment where now we have more men than women due because the Han family have always preferred the male son than the female. Our population, as you all know, grew when of the Cultural Revolution, 66 to 76. You have heard about the Cultural Revolution. You remember Mao and brother and his wife Jianqing. She had an immense power. In fact, she had stipulated that she could not give an announcement from the central government without a woman being present. So practically in any area of any work of the central government of China, there had to be the equity of men and women, equality men and women in number, etc., place, position, etc. In Chinese history, we can speak about a time where the strength of women has been prominent and has had a great influence. But I have worked in psychology and social psychology, and indeed, what they say is that when women goes out of the house is left without order. Eventually, it's men that does not have the possibility to be in charge of many things that has made puts women in the house. The house has been the basic nucleus of the Chinese society, and it needs the woman. And it's the woman that have shown us throughout history her capacity to be useful domestically and also in the society, and even more in this period. We can see in China where the majority of the feminine workforce is involved in formal employment. So this is how it is in the big cities. I want to say right now that in the 21st century, after all the socialist transformation, the position of women in Chinese society each time is stronger. I'm going to respect my questions. I have another question for Professor. With such a millenary history that China has, could you please tell us what is the philosophical sense that the Chinese population has regarding nature? Do they consider nature a subject of rights, a spiritual being? What is the cosmovision of the relation of the Chinese peoples, including the minorities, with nature? How do you harmonize this cosmovision that you spoke yesterday with this great economic growth of China? Again, I want to speak about tradition. I think Lao Tse, you all know him. Lao Tse says Tao gives origin to nature, and the Tao controls nature. Within the Tao cosmovision, the Taoist cosmovision, the Tao is way beyond man. This has governed in China, and this has been imposed for more than 2,000 years. All of you know Confucius. In fact, Lao Tzu we know as the philosopher of nature, and Confucius we know him as the ethics of society. Finally, Lao Tzu, we can see all the Chinese vision, traditional, on the vision of nature and the relation of men with nature. Nowadays, Lao Tzu, it's still in China. Maybe right now in the part of where I live, there's still people that still cut trees. But let's look what is the tradition. Does men know that they are cutting trees and they're doing something that is unlawful? Where they cut a tree, they put a rock because they are afraid that maybe nature realizes that he has done something that is unlawful. It's very interesting. Tradition is in our veins. And there's also the need of a subsistence or a richness. And the contradictions in China between tradition and modernity are very interesting. Where I live, really the basis of man's subsistence are trees. It's the forest. So the people that live in the region, the ones that cut down trees, quite often are not from there because there they are afraid of what nature would do. To cut a tree is to provoke a disaster. Maybe not today, but the future generations. And these Chinese have them on their veins. The Chinese don't think on the now. They think in the past and in the future. They usually think in periods of many, many years. During the Cultural Revolution, there was a time in history of the modern history. There has been some activities that we ourselves are not happy with. There have been political movements that have also taken us out of our own correct path of development. The current modernization processes imply some great mistakes. I just mentioned is to get a mistake to be able to correct. Also, the Chinese, we are a people, and we can say we are very superstitious. Our relationship with nature is very symbiotic. It has been throughout history. Anyone that knows the classics knows this. So, in the Chinese tradition, they have political movements, revolutions, which have shaken China in the 20th century, have made changes, have moved us, have changed our thinking. By finally, this is the existence, is to experiment wrong paths and go back to the past, or to open new ones that can give you opportunities that can open new horizons. Those years that we consider dark in the modern history, which is the Cultural Revolution, those 10 years were years of immense economic poverty and too much ideology. Later, they were substituted with poor ideology and rich or poor spiritual beings. And everything, you see Beijing, look at Shanghai, this have overcome many metropolises. It seems that we are competing with someone, that in a very short time we want to achieve what others have done in hundreds of years. The quick development generally the mistakes are unavoidable. And I see Ecuador, and this is really important. I like to see a country where man and nature can live in harmony. Professor, this question is not what I wanted to ask you, but I wanted to do it because I have been with this idea since we asked you and Professor Juan, because why we consider the resistance as something important in our society, because it was a way to reivindicate the rights of people to defy their destiny or the type of society where they want to live regarding the power of the government or the economic power. And I was very impacted when you said that word of resistance Maybe it's the word. Maybe you don't conceive it that way, but you spoke about to build in harmony. So I want to ask this question because I realize that the right to resistance is recognized in the political constitution of Ecuador. So after these exchanges that you have had with us, what do you think about our conception of the power to resist? As I have tried to insist since the beginning, the cultural baggage of China and of the West is different. And finally, Latin America, we can say, is part of what we call the West. When you speak about resistance, indeed, it's a word. What I always think, you speak about resistance. You live in a democratic country where you, through vote, elect your president. If you have elected, and moreover, you want the Constitution to back up the resistance, we in China, we have never elected the emperors or presidents. From this perspective, you supposedly that you chose him, but it should be to be total harmony. You choose so it helps you, but curiously, you choose the word resistance to relate with your government. So finally, I want to say, well, resistance perfect, but you speak about society. Society is also an abstract body made of many individualities on the same problem, and that a certain community has to represent maybe a violation to the rights of nature of the community. Seen by the neighboring community, it could be an excellent project. So finally, we should see what is the right for a community can be a violation of rights for another community. We have seen this more than once. We in China, nevertheless, the ones that you have read about the Chinese philosophy, you can see that the word harmony can define us. So within the process of livelihoods, we cannot speak of things that are 100% correct or 100% incorrect. That something that for you is satisfactory for me can be totally negative. So finally, if the resistance process we understand as something universal, well, where are the differences? Finally, resistance is a way that the civil society can reach some rights, some guarantees, but it's a civil society determined in a certain region. Yes, indeed. China, there's always the resistance, and as Professor Juan said it in the morning, several state projects and mega projects had been stopped. We also know this way of winning rights. In the Chinese history, we have an imperial history of 2,000 years where you have an emperor who has its power, and they have thought on the people. When they stop thinking on the people, then the people has the right to rebel against him and change the imperial house. And this has changed throughout the history, and that's why we have different dynasties. And the dynasties and the periods of prosperity, harmony has been the definite process. I finally think that the ones that are high want the ones that are lower have the right to live. So this is the harmony that in some way that we should try to accomplish. I think the natural trend of our life is harmony and not resistance, not conflict. I want to say that I had an experience. I reached a village I reach a very educated village, educated in the protection of civil rights. And I told him, look, you cannot cut the tree. And he hit me and he sent me to the hospital. So the rights of nature, what has happened living in a region, he said, before he hit me, oh, wait, I have many years, and this is what we do. We just don't cut without thinking. I say, no, I come with the order so you don't cut the tree. Of course, I ended up badly. So finally, I want to say that many public officials of the government have reached different provinces with documents and credentials to protect the environment, and they have had a very bad luck because finally they come from Beijing, from the central government, without any prior knowledge of the place that they're going to protect. So here, among many things, the one that we can protect the best, if I eat from this place, I know how I can protect this place. Nowadays, young people are very interesting. They are easy to influence and to send them to march and to resist, and quite often they don't know what is the cost to begin with. Professor, is this your first trip to Latin America? Is this your first trip to Latin America? Yes, it's my first trip to Latin America. Knowing the concerns that we have in Latin America regarding Chinese investments as citizens, are you worried of the image that the Latin American citizens have? I think it's a very deep thing. I really want to say this is how I think. I do not even dare to answer. But more than answering your questions, I want to say, I think you were with me when we were with the people in that beautiful meeting of more than 2 hours, and somebody asked if again Chinese come to invest here after this really bad experience, what are you going to tell them? Oh no, yes, to come. That was the answer of the majority of the population. I hope you remember this. So suddenly, I think finally, I want to say, because I don't want to answer, in the Chinese interest, the report of the company in this project Coca-Cola, and I see the other part of the coin, which is the Ecuadorian interpretation. I think in the end happens what always happens. One thing has two sides, and it has two truths. In this case, yes, of course, it was not nice to hear so much complaints, and really I care about the image of my country. Nevertheless, I would like to say, and I want to insist on this balance, that finally, yes, at this moment, this project, this hydroelectric dam, yes, it created a great deal of misfortune and did not bring the expected social benefits. But we have an electric dam that turns your country in an electricity exporter. This is when I speak about the balance. The balance yin-yang is a way of life. Nevertheless, yes, the conflicts of the regions and of the places are quite poor, where we have the mega projects. But nevertheless, we have to say that the mega projects won't solve all the problems or the places where they appear 100%, but they have to contribute for its solution. I just have a last question. In this question, I wanted to share the history of the Great Lake that I spoke at the beginning of Nicaragua, that we feel that we are immense also, although the dimension is small. It's a lake of a strategic importance for Central America, but now it's threatened by a concession that the government gave to a private Chinese entrepreneur. And as you have said, we have to ask accountability to our own government. Nevertheless, having heard all these days, knowing of your authentic concern for the importance to find paths to reach protection of the environment, and also for the importance for the survival of our communities. So I feel sure that we can build solidarity between people like you and me, because beyond the different visions, the different philosophical origins, situations that we have, I think we have this the common sense. And this exchange has helped me to try to find this solidarity, to build the solidarity between the Chinese and the Nicaraguan people. And the last question to finish is to know if you like the rum and the Nicaraguan chocolate that we gave you. The rum and the chocolate. He ate it already? The rum is delicious. The rum is delicious, the chocolate is delicious, but the women, they are wonderful. Truly, to be able to be with all my colleagues, with the academia, with the foundation, I want to say something to the Ecuadorians. I want to say that I really envy you, and I envy you more than half of China in this country, to walk through China, walking with their dogs in China, with the pressure of modernization and with the money as one of the main objectives. They live under a pressure that is totally inhuman. I realizing that all the Chinese, we realize that through modernity of the last 40 years, we are maybe richer than before, but we are emptier in our spirits. I have devoted myself to observe the people in the streets, the young people here at the university, the old people, even people that eventually has little economic resources. They laugh much more than any average Chinese. Thank you, Professor.